this quarter. Definitely start with the good news. In March we had our highest all-time high in terms of volume at a whopping nearly $11 billion. Followed the immediate next month after by our second highest volume month. There was a week span time period when we had our highest ever daily volume and then like our second and third highest in like within a 5-day period. So absolutely crushing it there. That said, the uptick in volume meant just a general higher load on THORChain itself, but also higher load on all of the downstream chains that we integrate as well. It's clear that many chains were suffering during this time as well. So let's not think that it's just, THORChain is blowing it. It's like this most recent sort of little bull run up in DEX volumes and, just network throughput was shared across a lot of chains, and a lot of chains had their fair share of downtime. So I will just preface that by saying those things. I think that this sort of like mini bull run we just saw was it was indicative of what's to come. And if cryptocurrency networks want to really be the backbone of the financial ecosystem for the world going forward, like we're all going to have to scale together. And I think that as an industry, we all saw that happen. And so, I, for one, am glad that we had sort of this like period of rapid sustained growth in metrics, because it really held us to the fire a bit and showed us what we need to work on and emphasize on THORChain. And obviously that's always going to be, stability and performance. So with the good news, with high usage and high volume also comes a lot of issues too. So I think the prevailing theme of Q1 was that we dealt with more P0 issues than I think we've ever dealt with before in any other quarter. At least it felt that way. So basically a P0 is defined as any perceived loss of funds by the end user. So like if they try to do a swap and for whatever reason the swap doesn't go through in a reasonable amount of time, that's the result of a P0 issue. That's our absolute, that's the worst thing that a user can do, is experience some sort of delay. Even if they get their money back 10 hours from now or whatever the queue clears, we still want to minimize the amount of P0s that we have that are perceptible to the end user, which are the swappers, followed closely by the number 2 P0, which I think we were seeing was irregularity of churns. So just to this audience, specifically to the node operators that are listening in, from the bottom of our hearts, we are as apologetic, as we can be about, and we hear you, like absolutely unacceptable having churns down for in a month and a half to 2 months. Our top priority is making sure that churns are happening consistently so that node operators can access the liquidity of their investment, whenever they want. So we take that super seriously. We'll show some statistics about that, but obviously that was not great. And then any downtime of substantial trading routes. Luckily, BTC and ETH were relatively cooperative, and a lot of the downtime we had was on some of the lesser profile chains. Binance Smart Chain, it's they're trying to do 6-second block times on Ethereum, and they basically they're trying to cram a lot of throughput out of that chain. So it's a heavy chain to run for the nodes. It's also a heavy chain for us to try to, keep everything smoothly running. But I think we got all those issues sorted out. But yeah, we'll get into that when we talk about sort of the support stuff later. And then also any P0 is anything that requires a manual remediation. So like a store migration, those just take a ton of time. We have to get a lot of eyes on those for correctness. They're difficult. Sometimes they don't work, so we have to attempt them again. And they just take up a lot of our time. So those, obviously P0s, because those are anything that can also impact the functioning of the network, such as the Ragnarok. The last churn was not just due to, I believe, AVAX being halted, but also due to an issue with the Doge balances needing to be store migrated due to basically due to improper solvency accounting. Basically, the THORChain thought it was insolvent when it really wasn't. So if anyone is really wondering why that was sort of outside of our control, in that like that required manual remediation to get the churn running. We obviously don't want that to ever happen. We want THORChain to be able to run without any intervention by human beings. So that's also one of the goals too, just as far as decentralization, uptime, performance, anything that impacts those is a P0 in our mind. So with that being said, we dealt with 35 of those in Q1, and yeah, that's too many. I mean, there's no two ways about it. That's too many, and so that means like the main emphasis for us this quarter is going to be reducing that number at all costs. At a glance, during Q1, we 37.8% of the time. So, a little over a month and a week about we spent with churn halted. So, again, that's something we're going to try to bring that down to 0%. I'd say so far in May, so far in May we're at 100%, and most of April as well. So those stability issues, like the long churn, was a crossover from Q1 into Q2, so that's not accounted in here. So it was a little bit longer than a month and a week. Actually, it was like a month and 3 weeks. Degraded performance, which is defined as any chain that is not either trading or LP was not available. Any period of time during which that was true for any chain is considered degraded performance by our team. And so that's about a quarter of the time during Q1, and only 24%, 24.5% uptime, fully operational, everything, all trading working. That is excluding churns. So that number would be a bit lower, around 64, 65% if we were including churns as well. So if you want to give us a letter grade, on the stability and performance, I give us anywhere from like a generous C minus to a D plus. So obviously not great. Definitely room for improvement. And a lot of learning there. And we'll make sure to do better on that in Q2 going forward. One thing I do want to, commend the team for is just the amount of issues that are documented. 127 opened issues in Q1. That, every little thing, every little issue with THORChain is documented. We do an incredibly good job of, monitoring the network and responding to and documenting any possible shortcomings. So it's not even like we have, unknown reason for the downtime. Like, we know that there's literally 127 issues, per quarter that are being documented. So that just goes to show it's like we're aware of them. We just are struggling with having the bandwidth to be able to address them all. So being able to more, effectively manage and deploy our resources has been something that we've spent a lot of time on in Q1. Just managing, categorizing, documenting, and assigning and prioritizing all of those issues is a big task in and of itself. Of 155 merge requests that were open, 106 of them got merged. So again, that just goes to show that we're not constrained here on how fast contributors can open PRs and write new code. We're constrained on how fast the team can review them and get them safely landed. There's never any, there's never any shortfall of great ideas or great features or improvements or enhancements that can be added to THORChain. It's solely a matter of whether we feel like we have enough bandwidth on the security and review side. People that are, it's eyeballs from people that are really experienced with running this network and reviewing those PRs. That is the main bottleneck right now. It's not something you just can hire more people to do. You want to have those reviews being done very carefully, very painstakingly, and by people that have a lot of context on this network. So, it's not something we can just throw heads at. unfortunately, if the stakes weren't as high and we were just like running a product team or a wallet or whatever, it's like, yeah, just hire a bunch of devs, throw manpower at it. It's more important that we do this right, and doing it right requires getting people with experience to double check and triple check everything. Some of the honorable mentions in terms of where we're continually spending a lot of bandwidth, it's in supporting chains. So, we kind of say sometimes like, oh, it's easy to add a chain. It's also easy to remove it. We can just be more experimental and try to add more chains. That's really not the case. Like we've realized with the BNB beacon chain that Ragnarocking it or attempting to Ragnarok it has just proved to be a bit of a thorn in our side. It doesn't happen correctly on the first try. There's always issues that are going to pop up and little exceptions. BNB beacon chain is, noteworthy in that it was the first chain added to THORChain. So it had just a lot of like tech debt and custom stuff that was attached to it. So hopefully in the future, that's not important, as important or as big of a factor, but definitely, hopefully, getting BNB finally Ragnaroked sometime within the next 1 or 2 software releases, so that we can get the node operators to spin those down and start saving money on those. Also, the Gaia hard forks. I mean, again, this just goes to show like we're really at the mercy not only of our own tech team and our own schedule, but the schedules and teams of every other upstream chain that THORChain is connected with. So Gaia team will just decide to like do a hard fork and give people 2 or 3 days notice. And there's really not much we can do about that, and until we get that hard fork done, we can't churn the network. So there's always going to be external issues that we run into when dealing with these lots of interconnectivities and dependencies. I'll also give an honorable mention to the feature support that's required. I'm sure, as you can all imagine, it's not just a matter of like building a feature and releasing it. There's a lot of things that don't make it in the initial release, like affiliate fees. So like we had to basically go back and add the affiliate fees, and with trade accounts, which are hopefully going to get released soon, we haven't added the liquidation mechanism. So there's a lot of things that kind of get punted on the feature work, and it all requires ongoing support. So the amount of time we've spent also diagnosing some issues with the derived pool depths, which have been an issue for people closing their loans. The algorithm has required tweaking, and that's a very key and integral part of the safety mechanism of lending as well. So as you can imagine, a lot of cycles spent on that as well. So it just goes to show you we're never going to be perfect when we launch something on the first try, and it's going to always require tweaks, and that requires bandwidth from the team. Finally, supporting integration. So again, all that stuff I mentioned, store migrations, going back and forth with teams, making sure that they have everything that they need, making sure that they're empowered for success, following up with them to make sure that they're utilizing the protocol properly, advising them not to do things like send Bitcoin from Taproot addresses because their funds will get swallowed. I mean, it's just a constant nightmare of things. Like there's different chains have different quirks, and just going through and being able to as we bring on board more users, they tend to screw things up in new ways that also they never fail to surprise us. So we've had a couple of surprises like, oh, I didn't really realize you could do that. So yeah, there's just been, keeping the integrations pipeline going. And, I will just give a shout out to the integrations team. Familiar Cow and Eridanis in 9 Realms have been absolutely crushing it on that side. We have a ton of really exciting stuff in the pipe. The volume just continues to grow, and in no uncertain terms, that is due to the work that the 9 Realms team is putting on in the integrations front. So just on that side of things, I know this is mostly aimed at just giving updates about network stuff, but the integration stuff is shaping up really nicely, and we hope to land some really key players this year, which we'll be happy to talk about once those get landed. This graph is interesting. So yeah, P0s, 1s, and 2s accounted for about half of the merge requests that were made in the last quarter. as you can see here. So a P0 is basically like something is broken in mainnet right now. A P1 is basically something that's like, if we don't address this promptly, it's going to break something in mainnet or foreseeably. And then a priority 2 is like, we should probably get this in. Everyone feels like this is an important thing to get in for stability, but not explicitly causing an issue at this time. And then everything else, priority 3, which accounted for 50% of the PRs, are things like cleanup, things like new features. They're optional, and that's really a mindset shift that I want to call out from like this last quarter into this next one, compared to last year, where people can think of features as being a top priority, P1 or P2, but the priority is always stability and performance. So we're basically considering anything that's new business a priority 3 or less. Just to call out here, yeah, just the number of cleanup PRs, like how much we continue to improve the THORChain code base, that accounted for about 17.3%. Also, as I mentioned before, just keeping the different chain clients up to date and functioning properly, that accounted for 14.2%. We had a lot of vault and security related PRs at 6.2% each, respectively. However, even though those were a small number of PRs, those take an outsized amount of time to review due to the sensitivity of the things that they touch. And then, yeah, I wanted to give an honorable mention to the testing and mocknet stuff. Some really exciting and important stuff landed, even starting this quarter, but also extending into last. We'll talk about those shortly. But those are just the merge request breakdown by category. Also, want to take this time to give a shout out to our top contributors. These dense white squares that you can see here on the screen represent days in which there were over 30 contributions, which include issues, merge requests, pushes, or comments. So these 2 guys, Multipartite and Ursa, I'd like to just highlight as being the main drivers of the maintenance of this network. You can see oftentimes working 7 days a week straight. So really want to give those 2 guys a shout out for their continued commitment to the protocol and everything that they've done. I also wanted to highlight some new contributors that we brought onto the team, 2 awesome additions. Fishtail, who's helping on the THORSec side and helping with the Go TSS library, which some of those improvements should increase the performance of TSS as well as reduce the amount of slash points that node operators take. So I figured you guys would like that. And then Aniket, who is a new developer we brought on last quarter, who's been working on some of the new feature stuff like the Mimir migration, which will allow us to eventually sunset admin Mimir, and the synth backstop, which nodes recently voted on as wanting to do forced ejections. So he's got a PR up for that as well. So yeah, 2 really awesome new additions to the team. And always looking for more people to join as well. So as there's been a lot of eyes on THORChain lately, we've had a lot of new people show renewed interest in the protocol, which has been great. And we'll wrap it up with just a brief look ahead at the Q2 roadmap. One of the top things that is working on this quarter is the simulation and regression testing frameworks, have been indispensable for helping us find issues before they even get to mainnet, have been indispensable helping us develop features safely. I can't imagine what we're doing before we had these. It's just given us so much more confidence in terms of pushing code. And with the new simulation test, we'll be able to deprecate the old smoke tests and have full testing coverage across every chain client. Which will hopefully allow us to release chain and test chain client fixes faster. One of the things that we've internally agreed on as a team is not to do any new feature work until 30 days have passed without a P0 incident. So far, we're on a good streak here. We hope that by like the end of May, we can start to pick up some of those items in the last 4 bullet points. Those are kind of like the optional, discretionary, but like highly prioritized feature work. In the meantime, this month, we're going to be working on the TSS improvements I mentioned, getting those landed. preparing for a hard fork, which will allow us to add Taproot support for Bitcoin, which has been extremely highly requested, as well as upgrade our Cosmos version, which will allow us to enable IBC. And then once we get into like June and the latter half of this quarter, we can start picking up work again on fun stuff like order books and Solana, which I know you guys are all extremely excited for. And as I start to feel like we have more bandwidth and I have more bandwidth, I'm personally going to be working on getting trade accounts, getting order books out. But that requires getting the trade account stuff released first. So I think after we see trade accounts turned on and running in mainnet, and if there's any ARBs listening here, like we hope that you guys are all going to be proactive about either reaching out or posting. If there's any questions about trade accounts, you can test it now on StageNet, or just wait and test it on mainnet when it goes live. Hopefully it's going to go live this week. And as soon as we can get all like the ARBs, switched over to that, and we know that, trade accounts is working well, that's when we can start working on the order book stuff and, building the order books, because that's going to leverage trade accounts as well. So yeah, it's really like it's a group effort here. Like we did our part, we're going to launch order books. Now we need all the ARBs to migrate to it, show us that it works. If it doesn't work, bear with us so that we can patch it and, fix it. But we expect it to work. And once that's proven to us and we have the data, then we can start doing the order book stuff. And then, yeah, EDDSA, I mean, anything requiring changes to our TSS implementation and the core vault logic that underpins THORChain is obviously met with the highest scrutiny. So that work can only really proceed once everyone feels like they have. I mean, literally, like I want to get the whole THORSec team, everyone just swarming on that and like getting in the right headspace to be like, are we actually ready to launch a new cryptographic encryption scheme on THORChain? It has to be like pure focus to nail that one. So hopefully we get that, lined up sooner than later, but, I'd say that's still probably not even going to land next quarter. So don't get your hopes up. I think it would be a stretch to land order books, and everything else that we have listed on here. But, if we do, and we do get to all that stuff, EDDSA and Solana would be up next after that. So yeah, that's it. That's our status update. Let's turn it over to questions. Just go ahead and raise your hand. I think, yeah, raise your hand. We'll bring you guys up on stage. Parking lot question. Oh, shoot, there's a bunch in the chat. I haven't even had a chance to catch up on the chat. If anyone just wants to speak, like Cow or Aquila, just let me know if you want to synthesize any of that stuff. Landsats wants to know about any links to threads to IBC implementation. Curious what IBC. Yeah, there's still no plan to use IBC for anything. I think that most people on the team are still skeptical about whether IBC really does bring any value to THORChain itself. We want as much exogenous assets in the protocol and liquidity pools as possible. But there is a case to be made for any feature that brings and locks more Rune in the protocol. So if people can use Rune to mint derived assets and then export them via IBC and make them productive elsewhere on other networks, that would be a good reason, right? I think once we move on from this sort of period of instability, sort of the highest priority for us as the team, I discussed this with JP Thor extensively at our last meeting, but and Orion as well, spearheading efforts on that. Things like Rune Vault, things like IBC, anything that's going to create more utility for Rune, more demand for Rune, are going to be top priorities for us. So, still in the ideation phase as far as those things. I think we were starting to get a little bit of an idea of what the Rune Vault would look like from a design perspective. Some interesting developments there, but still nothing ready to share. I think there was a lot of like mishap in the community last year when the Twitter started pumping up this idea of like Rune Vault and Rune Vault 2.0. And I think we all agree internally that like we're not going to talk about this stuff publicly until we have a design that everyone feels good about. And so, do not mistake the quiet on that front in terms of like it's abandoned. It's just that we're all kind of working to land on a design that everyone likes. And if we don't land on a design that everyone likes, it'll just be put up to a vote. But obviously, we would love to have unification around that. And props to Orion for pulling a lot of the data on that stuff as well. Because it really kind of levels the expectations and creates a reality around what's actually possible with a rune type staking feature. So yeah,
and quickly on IBC, we've been talking with the IBC devs. So they've done a lot of improvements to IBC, which makes it more tenable to be on THORChain, including implementing all the things that would be needed for it to run on THORChain, being a very different architecture than like another all the other Cosmos chains that use IBC. So they've done a lot of work on that end. So like for this next hard fork, updating the Cosmos version to at least be able to support it, then we can have the conversation around what we want to do with it, and probably exporting assets, and like how exactly do we leverage that in the future. But the hard fork will at least give us the option to say like, all right, we're on the right Cosmos version, we can do this if we want, or if people don't want to, then we don't have to, but it gives us the optionality at least.
Nice. Yeah, for sure. Excited to see that as well. What else?
Hey, Vodka, I'm not sure what you're asking for. Are you asking for a dedicated channel for ARB support? Just let us know what you want there.
Do you want to talk about the simulation testing at all?
Yeah, I mean, if Versa wants to get up and talk about it, it's not really important for this audience. I mean, it's more of a dev thing. It's just, we don't need to hit it really. I'd rather talk about stuff that's like, questions about priorities, questions about, like why do we prioritize certain things over other things. I think I've done a pretty good job about that, but if there's any questions, like I think it's pretty clear that like the overarching theme here is, that we have to make sure that like we're doing well. Like we need to be performing at least the A or B category before we like start doing feature stuff again. So that's why we'll take a look at the those metrics that I showed at the beginning of the presentation. We'll just do a snapshot of those like mid-quarter and maybe reevaluate from there how we're all feeling as a team. So look out for that next. Maybe towards in the next like 2 weeks we'll look at how we've done this quarter so far, and then make a go no go call there about what's sort of the next priority. But I'm feeling pretty good about things right now. This month has been smooth. So yeah, maybe just like what's useful from an ARB POV. So yeah, trade accounts are definitely more capital efficient than synths to that has been more are more capital efficient than synths to ARBs. So basically any ARBs that are using trade accounts, like as soon as they're released, are going to be able to basically capture more value and more spread in the ARB that they make than people using synths. So there's going to be an immediate incentive for ARBs to switch over to trade accounts. But if there's any that are like still using it after a few weeks, we'll try our best to reach out to them. But basically, we're gonna eventually stop the ability for ARB swaps to occur, and they'll only be reserved for streaming. So we're gonna basically gauge like what the adoption looks like, and if it's like immediate and instantaneous, then we don't need to have any plan to deprecate quickly. But if people are dragging their feet on it, then there needs to be a more swift action taken, like potentially applying additional fees on synth swaps to disincentivize them further. So yeah. Also, gland stats, like you didn't really have to like bring that in here. That's kind of appreciate it though. Yeah, we don't need to go into deep discussion about the trade account stuff right now either. That's just kind of, I think we can dissect those arguments more carefully. But yeah, hopefully those get launched today. Or not, sorry, not today. We're going to get mainnet 132 release cut today. I'm super excited for that one. That's going to bring the multi-asset just dynamic outbound fee multiplier. We ran into an issue with that in the past week or couple of weeks or so. So we had to basically roll back DOFM and put the fees back to the pegged 3x. So if anyone's wondered why recently the fees have been higher on THORChain, it's basically just because the feature that allows users to pay as little as we possibly can charge them for fees has been a little bit bugged. We got that addressed, and we are rolling out an even better solution in 132. And then with that, the fees should come back down to being like the lowest that we can possibly charge while not having the reserve essentially have to eat a loss over a long period of time. So I think that we've reached the best possible implementation of fees on THORChain. Like I think we can safely say that that's something that we've literally taken years to try to get dialed. And so, yeah, I think we're almost finally there on that. So really excited to see that go out in 132. That's going to get cut today. We'll get that released to nodes almost as soon as this call is over. And then after that, yeah, we'll get trade accounts turned on, and then we can figure out the whole migration plan for them. Cool. All right, I haven't seen any new questions or comments from anyone. Was there anyone else on the team wanted to add about priorities and just performance and that kind of stuff?
No, nothing to add. Just a huge thanks to Pluto for putting all this together. There's a lot of work, pulling a lot of things. Thanks for the time, and yeah, like I said, there's a lot of stability cleanup to do. We're all really excited for it, and hopefully it shows at the end of this quarter. So stoked.
Awesome. And yeah, thanks everyone for joining, taking time out of your day to join. Again, just wanted to reiterate that these sessions are important, and we enjoy getting feedback. We like to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly. And there definitely was a fair share of that in the last quarter, and we hear those things, and they affect our prioritization, and they give us the confidence. We couldn't do this without you guys and without your feedback. So keep it coming.
Yeah, and especially like make relays from node operators. Like anyone sees like features, issues. Obviously, we get a lot of DMs and whatnot, but yeah, feel free to. I wish people would use make relay a lot more. So just a plug for that, and just another plug that we might have more of those make pause. What do we call them? Exercises here and there. So just stay tuned for those, and maybe you two can get your own custom React emoji here one day. So no, thanks guys. I seriously appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. And then also, we're going to be doing some exercises, I think, this quarter for like the Mimir V2 implementation, which we'll share more information about that once the docs and everything are in a good place. But yeah, it'll be sweet. We'll be able to finally retire the admin Mimir, and that's the last step to fully handing over control of the network to the operators.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, obviously, we'll be here to guide everything, but it'll be really, great to have, that be fully in the hands of the decentralized ecosystem.
Going once, going twice. Questions? Sweet.
Later.
All right. See you guys. Thanks, everybody.
Sounds good. Recording will be up on RSS a little later. See you.
Bet.